Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian, and today's guest is a returning guest, and we're excited about her return because not only do we love talking to her and hearing about all of her fascinating life and the work that she's doing, but she's written a book, and her book is coming out, and we're going to be talking all about her book. Everything no one tells you about parenting a disabled child. So for us, we feel, particularly honored that Kelley is back to allow us to be part of her promotional campaign to talk about this book. We're going to get into details. Another episode of Just Two Dads. Hi, everybody. I am Brian Altunian. Whoa, a little echo there. I'm Brian Altunian along with Sean Francis and our special guest, Ms. Kelley Coleman. Today, we're going to be talking about the release of her book. Before we do that, just get a little things out of the way. Thank everybody who's catching us live on Facebook. If you're seeing us, please leave comments for us. If we can, we'll put them up on the screen. If you're seeing us after the fact on our YouTube channel, please hit the like and the subscribe button. Let us know if there's a subject that you'd like us to talk about or comment that you'd like to make on any of the episodes. We are now 3.5 years in and almost at 160 episodes now of Just Two Dads, which is amazing. If you want to reach us via email, we are just2dads@gmail.com. We've made it kind of simple. Also, if you're catching us on podcasts, thanks for making us part of your listening day. We really appreciate it. And for those down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, our friends and family down there at WSTX AM radio, thank you also for making us part of your day. Before I forget, I want to thank Sean Hall in Hawaii, who keeps us on track and keeps us in line. He's a great producer and a good friend of ours. Before we get into today's conversation with our guest, who we are so excited to be talking to, I'm going to throw it over to Sean, and we have a message for some of our friends down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So, Sean, I'm going to throw it to you.
I wanted to, on behalf of the show and everyone at Just Two Dads, extend our condolences to the family of Robert Moorhead. Robert and I attended school together in 3rd grade, then again in 9th grade. After we went our separate ways, we took karate lessons together for a period of time, and he recently passed away. And the fact that Just Two Dads is being heard on WSTX, he's the reason for that.
Right.
And so we just want to extend our condolences to his friends and family in the community and abroad, and just send our love. So we're excited to get into today's show. Ordinarily, we will begin the show by talking about someone's background, how and where they were raised, metaphorically, physically, literally, spiritually, because that's where our superpowers come from as heroes. But we've covered that because our guest today is someone who is returning. And when she was here before, she talked about a book that she was working on. Since that time, the book has been completed. It's available for pre-order. I had the honor of contributing to the book. Welcome back to Just Two Dads, none other than Kelley Coleman.
Hello. So happy to be here. Whoa. Thank you guys again for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Yeah, we're excited.
So the title of the book is Everything, I'm going to butcher it and say everything they don't tell you and keep a secret.
That'll
no one
be
tells
right
you.
There.
Yeah.
Everything no one tells you about parenting a disabled child.
And so we're going to talk about several things today, which are, the topics within the book, because there's so many of those things. But we're also, I think, a good place to start, because we're such about service and inspiration and reminding people that they're not alone. Tell us a little bit about the journey to writing the book, because it's about to be birthed for the public, but there's a whole story that goes behind it. You and I have talked about that, the notion of writing a book, what goes behind all of that. And I think especially for our fellow parents and caregivers, that's something that carries tremendous value. So why don't we start there?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So I'm a writer by trade and also spend much of my work time as a mom, which is work, as you guys know, being a parent. And I have two amazing kids. I have a 12-year-old Sean, spelled differently, and a 10-year-old named Aaron. And Aaron has multiple disabilities, including an yet undiagnosed genetic syndrome, epilepsy, autism, cerebral palsy, microcephaly, cortical vision impairments, feeding tube, sensory. Like he's just kind of an overachiever and is like, I'm gonna check all those boxes. So we got lots of stuff covered. That said, my guys are both goofballs and happy and handsome and all the things. So certainly without Aaron's disabilities as an important part of our family, this book never would have happened. I am a writer and was working on other things, and one day about a year and a half ago, he had a relapse back into a couple of seizures and epilepsy, and woke up one morning and was like stopping the seizure and getting the meds and hadn't been sleeping, and eventually like he pulled out of it, and he loves his therapy and his therapists. And so once he was fine and stable and okay, that we have found for him just going through the motions, and even if we take it easy at therapy, that we're like, okay, we're gonna like go to therapy. And so I took him and I said, I'm gonna go grab a coffee nearby, right a couple blocks away. I have my phone on, call me for any reason, I will come. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to like do the things and like move past this. And I'm going to like get a fancy coffee and I'm going to like sit down and write. And was like patting myself on the back for powering through until I got there. Right. We all know where this is going. This is not going well.
Yeah.
Those moments when you're like, I have everything figured out.
I have it handled. I got it figured out.
You're
right.
like,
right.
Everything. I totally got this. You don't got anything. So I sat down and I was sitting outside and like had my sunglasses on and I'm holding my coffee. I open up my laptop and I literally just started like bawling. And
Wow.
It was just like the seizures and the vomiting and the no sleep for all of us and just like all of the things. And I was like, this is way too much and I don't got this. And I was like, I'm just gonna like type something because otherwise I'm just like the weird lady crying at Starbucks. And I've been that person plenty of times. Sometimes people buy you cake pops, which is great. If
Good
you
to
see,
know.
Right? If you see someone crying at Starbucks, just buy them a cake pop, just slide it on their table and just walk away. It makes everything better.
That's nice.
Right? We all need more cake pops. So I was like, I just need to write something so that I felt like I was taking back my day in some way. And I ended up typing what is mostly the introduction for this book. And I had spent years with people saying like, oh, you should write a book. And I'm like, no, like I write other things. And most of my background is developing talking animal movies at Disney and other places. And I was like, I'm not going to write this book. That sounds exhausting. That sounds like nonfiction is not my thing. And that morning, as I'm like crying behind my glasses at Starbucks, like wishing someone would buy me a cake pop. By the way, I could have just bought my own cake pop, but somehow it would
for
be
sure.
Different.
No, it's
not the same.
It's a better story.
Right.
It's a better
from
story.
A stranger. Like that's
yeah.
So
that should be the title of the next book, by the way. Cake Pop from a Stranger.
Cake Pop, by the way, which is either a wonderful, inspiring book or a terrible horror story about all the things you should never let your children do.
Right.
So, either way. So as I'm like typing and crying and drinking and like ignoring the world, I was like, you know what? I need to write this book. And something I know we talked about before and that we've all talked about is the powerlessness that you feel when you're like, I am totally inadequately prepared for how to support my child. And I am just like in this pit that seems to be bottomless. And for me, it was the realization of the way that I crawl out of the pit, because sometimes you just keep getting pushed back into the pit, is by actually doing things and connecting with people and finding that community. And I'm weirdly good at organizing stuff. I'm weirdly good at paperwork. And so for me, I feel like there are a lot of great memoirs out there. Nobody ever needs to read my memoir. Like, I'm not that interesting, but I'm real good at paperwork. And so the book has many personal stories. It has letters from fellow parents. It has interviews with more than 40 of these amazing experts. And it's a whole lot of lists and bullet points and templates and worksheets of how to actually do the stuff. Because for me, the ability to break things down and be objective is a way to kind of take back the power of, like, I'm not a totally inadequate human, and I can figure out how to be a person and parent both of my children. And as we discussed before, there's such a gap in access to information. I'm a white lady who speaks English, so my kid gets more stuff, and that's not okay. And I look at Aaron's school, which is over 80% native Spanish-speaking families, a lot of native Armenian-speaking families, many people who are coming to this school with kids who have similar level of support needs, but they don't have all the advantages. And teachers are saying, like, hey, can you talk to this parent about X, Y, and Z, because I'm not allowed to, or they need to hear from a parent, or I don't know how to navigate this. And so I just have such a passion for saying, how do we narrow that gap in access to information so that we're not just being told, go home, Google, and cry. And if you check the privilege boxes, then your kid's going to get more stuff. And if not, good luck.
So let me ask you a question, just to interrupt your flow, but let's just go back for a second, because that process is, I find, fascinating. So you're sitting at Starbucks and your tears are flying and are
flowing,
streaming down your face.
Maybe flying.
Yeah, maybe they fly. Maybe they fly.
And you said, and I started writing and the book came out. But that's not how it happens, right? Is it sort of free association? Was it something like you thought, you know what, I need to write down something so that I can have some objective perspective on what I'm dealing with? Was it like journaling? Was it, how did this process start? Because we know a ton of people that want to write books and they have no idea, and they stare at a blank page, what even happened. So because you're a writer, just curious how that beginning process in that moment started for you, because that was the beginning of a kernel of an idea that turned into something. So
absolutely. And I'll speak to that specifically of what this individual book was for me, but also, and I know Sean and I have talked about this, of how the heck to start a book if you're not already with 1 or 2 feet in this world, and what then? Sure. For me, I was just kind of like typing for the sake of typing, and it ended up with a vaguely narrative thing that became my introduction. And then, because my brain works in bullet points all the time, not just in parenting stuff, I was writing, like, if this is a book, here are the chapters. And I made a list of, here's what the chapters will be. And that changed only very slightly. But literally, as I was sitting there, it was, a decade of all of this being pent up in my head and just kind of swimming around, to, like, I was so wrung out that it's like everything floating in my head just sort of came out. And while that sounds like, oh, so that's so easy, also it's 20 plus years of being a writer, plus 10 years of the disability parenting thing. So for me, it all kind of came out at once. I already had a book agent who had a fiction book of mine out on submission, and I emailed her and I said, hey, I know what I want my next book to be. It's this. And her email back was so great, because this was not her world at all. She said, this is both a surprise and is just so obvious. And we decided to continue to, she offered to either introduce me to nonfiction agents or to shepherd this herself. And I said, you get me, so let's have you shepherd this, and along with others at her agency. And we ended up, for fiction, to sell a book, unless you're Stephen King, for fiction, you write the whole book and then the whole book gets submitted. For nonfiction, you write a book proposal and then that's what gets submitted. And I literally was Googling how to write a nonfiction book proposal. And 3 months later, from the first Googling how to do the book proposal, 3 months later, we were negotiating a preemptive offer from one of the big 5 publishers. So that to
Beautiful.
say, all of the information you need is available for free online. Or we can just tell you now and you can skip all of that. So there's that too. Yeah. So fiction, nonfiction, there are different ways of going about it. And I'll turn this on you guys. I know Sean has said that he's toyed with the idea of writing a book. Brian, do you feel like, no, I'm running away from that? Or do you feel like that's anything you've ever thought about?
Oh yeah, no. I've got I mean, I spent a lot of time in the entertainment industry. So, a treatment for a book or a treatment for a film or, or television is very similar just from a proposal perspective. So no, I've got a few that have already been started. So
yes.
We've talked about
Sean,
it together.
Talked about doing it together.
Both.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Both. Yeah.
Which you guys should, and you definitely. And I'd be happy to go through kind of the conversations I have with people of I want to write a book. Now what? To actually writing a book. Oh yeah, Brian.
For me, and again, I think that would be really valuable. I'm fascinated just to know more about the book. I hadn't seen any preview copy or anything. So I'm coming to this, as I'm sure people who are listening to this in the same way. So I get it. There's lists and bullet points and input and letters from parents and whatnot. So would you describe the book as kind of a manual, these are the things that if once you have a diagnosis for your child, these are the kinds of things that you're going to encounter or you should be looking for. Here's a to-do, or is it again, like a journal, this are my adventures and this is what we went through. So I'm just curious as to talk about the book a little bit more.
Yeah,
then we'll get into the detail about how to do it. Yeah.
Yep. So the way that I discuss my book with most people is I refer to it as the alternative to go home, Google, and cry, which is basically how most of us are delivered a diagnosis. Here's the thing, bye, good luck. And there's no foundation of here's where to start. So each chapter is really the foundational information and digs into how to get the right and real information and what you will need to do and how to build a plan that works for your family and for your specific child, and certainly involving them to the fullest extent possible. When we started on this journey, Aaron was an infant, so he wasn't real involved. He was just pooping and sleeping a lot. Sure. But so chapters are getting comfortable with disability and future planning and financial care plans, IEPs, school and what that looks like, disability rights and advocacy, insurance and social services, inclusion within your community, what this looks like for you as a parent caregiver, and other things that I'm sure are brilliant, but I don't remember. So I'm just going to peruse my table of contents until I find them. Oh, look. So this is an uncorrected copy, hence why the back cover looks weird. And about therapies and working with your medical team, because that's a big one of when we're starting on this. How do you find specialists? How do you know who to talk to? There's a chapter on diagnosis as well. How do you actually get a diagnosis? And then what? And what do you need to bring to meetings? And what do you do?
Right.
Take away. And so it's all of that stuff that a decade in that we're all like, oh yeah, I kind of figured that out. but it's for both people starting out so that they can kind of cut the line of figuring all of that out and they can start with that. And also for people who have been at this a while, who need to build a real plan for how to deal with their insurance or how to make a future care plan. And every chapter has the bullet points called What Worked for Me? And like, this is what our specific family did. And then it ends with the where do I begin? And so it's your questions to ask yourself, and your here is how you build this and put this in place for your specific child. My kiddo checks so many boxes, and there is a lot of overlap with other kids and individuals who have needs that are medical, cognitive, behavioral, like all of the things, but he literally doesn't have a diagnosis, overall genetic diagnosis yet. If we ever were to get that, he might literally be the only person in the world with that diagnosis. So my kid is very similar to yours, but also is different than yours. So it's not a book saying exactly how you must do it. It's saying, here's the information you need and the questions you need to ask yourself and how to build a path so that you can figure this out for yourself.
I love that because it falls so much in line with a lot of my thought and mentality, and maybe even my inner struggle, because I try to make sure that anything that I post, that I share, when I raise my hand in the proverbial room, I'm almost to a fault so big on making sure that I walk the walk, talk the talk. I'm not selling something that is not true. And so I've always said that, I will never attach the word expert to my name or be comfortable with it, no matter what the topic is, because we need to be so conscious of other people's experiences. So I think it's just fantastic that you're like, here's what's worked for our family. Here's what we did, because there's so many people that fall short of that. So that's the first thing I was going to say. But the other thing I was going to ask you, and I suspect you might have had the same challenge that I would, because I think our brains operate a little similarly in that. And I'm thinking the same thing of any idea I have for a book, which is the topic is so vast. Maybe the answer is the assistance that you had. How did you get to the point where you cut it off? Because, or did you go, oh my gosh, I left this out. There was this topic and that, because there's so many of them, so many areas and so many things that nobody tells us about.
Yep. I think that's a great question of like, how do you know what to put in and what to not put in? A part of it is there's a deadline, so you have to make choices, and I love a deadline. That really helped having that from my editor. And there were chapters that I had intended on writing for this, but I realized they're not what best serves the material. And also, one of my interviews is with Judy Heumann, who unfortunately passed away last March, who's known as the mother of the disability rights movement. And I sat down with her and she's like, how long is this book going to be? Because this is a 500-page book. Nobody needs that. Nobody wants that. And, talking to her, talking to other people of, if my goal is for this to be usable to the maximum number of people, it needs to read like a conversation. It can't feel like eat your broccoli. It needs to feel like you're having a conversation with a friend and that you actually understand everything. And it doesn't mean we're dumbing anything down. It just means we're being humans talking to other humans. And so narrowing it down was a challenge, but also I feel like the material lent itself to that because I wanted to make this as broad as possible. And as much as I was really thinking, I would love to go into epilepsy and feeding tubes and stuff that is very specific to our family as well as many others. For me, my goal was to make this a resource for all families with children of disabilities of all types. And so with that guiding principle, it definitely helped me to narrow it down, and also deciding which sections would be in each chapter. For fiction, you just like go and you write in a very different way. For nonfiction, again, for someone whose brain works in bullet points, making a list of the sections that I wanted to include in each chapter made it so manageable, because I can't sit down and say, I'm going to write 12 chapters today. I can't sit down and say, I'm going to commit to writing one whole chapter today. But you know what? I can commit to an introduction. I can commit to a list of what worked for me. I can commit to following up with these experts. Breaking it, I'm all about like, what is the one thing I can do today? How can I break everything down into the smallest, most manageable bits? And if writing 5 bullet points of what worked for me to navigate social services is what I can do today, then I can do that. And I was asking myself from the very beginning, and as I was putting together this proposal, you know, what is my goal for this? Is my goal to write a bunch of stuff, or is my goal to finish a book? And when I decided that my goal was to finish a book, that also helped to focus me. As you know, it is just a rabbit hole of all of these things you can do. Yeah. And so for me, I said, the goal is to finish the book. What does that look like? And I said, I would need these chapters, I would need these sections, I would need these experts, and I would need this many parents to write letters. And then breaking that down into how all of that happens. And it was fun to be able to be more concretely goal-oriented in a way that with nonfiction, it's harder to do because you can set up goals for yourself, but it's not as straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to, I don't want the first half of the show to go without people knowing that they can pre-order the book at on your website. It's also on Amazon. For those that are listening, Kelley Coleman, it's Kelley with 2 E's, Kelley, Coleman.com, Coleman, KelleyColeman.com. And they can pre-order the book now. And the book comes out officially March 12th of next year, correct?
It does.
So it's awesome. And again, we'll get into more detail, but I didn't want the first half of the show to go without giving you this shameless plug. Order the book, go to Kelley's site. You can see more on her site. There you go. For those who are seeing it on screen, Sean's put it up on the screen.
Well, thank you. And my most common question about the website is, did AI take those pictures underwater? And no, that's actually me underwater with a real laptop and a coffee mug.
And I know that was the case because you told us that. I think you told me that, but I gotta ask, like, how did you do that? Because your hair is it's moving like in the background, but it's still fairly still. How many takes did that take?
Many. We had lots and lots of outtakes, and it was equal parts nerve-wracking and really fun. There's a local photographer that does portrait photography as well as underwater photography, and I had this idea for a long time of wanting to do the underwater with the laptop. I feel like I love photography and that it can tell stories, and I love the story of like, I'm underwater, but I'm still doing the thing.
Feeling underwater. Totally.
Just keep swimming.
Yeah, like there's so much metaphor happening there, and so I was really fortunate that all came together. And in a weird way, first of all, back up your laptops, everybody. Do it today. That's the lesson I learned when my old laptop died. Data recovery.
What's what happens when you take it underwater, FYI. I'm just kidding.
Oh, it actually died before I took it underwater. But yes, back up the computers, especially before you take them underwater.
Definitely. Awesome. So how long did it take? Well, I guess it depends on your reference point and where, but how long did it take to write the book?
So my timeline is, from other friends who are authors, is pretty typical. For me, it was about 2 years from proposal going out to when the release date will be. So some people say, wow, that's fast. Other people say, wow, that's forever. If you're self-publishing a book, it can move much, much faster because I was working with a publisher. We were building in their production timelines and release dates, also publicity and marketing, and giving all of that the lead time that it needs. So it's been about a 2-year process for me, which went by very fast. There's a deadline looming.
Yeah, for sure. Was there a follow-up question there, Sean? I wasn't sure if you were.
No. Go ahead.
I think one of the biggest challenges that people have, there are many challenges when people think about writing a book, but the idea of, is it something I should self-publish? Should I get a publisher? Does it even make sense with all the promotion and the self-promotion that you do now? Does it make sense to have a big publisher that, often take a big chunk of, of the royalties? Clearly you have a publisher and I'm going to acknowledge that,
Mm-hmm.
Publishers are good. I also had an ebook company many years ago, and we did a lot of self-publishing for folks who didn't have the ability to go get a publisher or weren't accepted. Mm-hmm. Publishers have only a limited amount of slots, if you will. And so anyways, I could go on, but your perspective on this, getting a publisher, mm-hmm. self-publishing, tell me your thoughts.
There are a zillion ways to publish a book. All of them are very legitimate and exciting. And my advice to people, especially as they're starting off on their journey, is don't tie yourself to one thing or another. Explore the paths and figure out what works for you. A great place to start with is not just, is your goal to write some stuff or to finish a book, but what is your goal with your book? Is it because you feel like if you don't just get your story out and written down, then you're just going to explode, and you need to get that out there because you want your kids and grandkids and great grandkids to read it. And you're like, sure. I don't care if it gets published. I just want to write this. Is it that you want to change disability justice? Is it, for me, it's, I want to get this into the hands of every parent who needs it, which means, that we are talking not just to parenting organizations and disability organizations, but to medical professionals and social service workers and educators and anyone who could be delivering a diagnosis. For me, as I said, I already had a book agent. So many people, so you can sell a book with or without an agent, and it's a different process. It's easier with an agent because you sit back and you eat your cake pop and you wait for them to call you and tell you someone's made an offer. So great. The agent takes a percentage, which they absolutely earn. The agent takes a percentage, but you're also tapping into their labor, which is nice things, and to their contacts. Also, there are many publishers who will not take submissions that are not coming through an agent, and you can find that out from all the publishers' websites. And a big question that people ask me is, how do I get an agent? Again, many ways to do this. If folks are not in an industry that has access to agents, one of the best bits of advice that I ever got when I first started the book world on the fiction side is there are organizations and conferences for the type of book that you want to write, whether it is a picture book, middle grade fiction, nonfiction, parenting, romance, like all the things. There is an organization and there is a conference. Look and see who has either contributed to the newsletters of the organization, or especially who were the speakers at their recent conferences, recent being the last year, 2 years, even 3 years, And oh, look, all of the agents who spoke at this writing conference the last 2 years, they're probably not speaking unless they are looking for new clients. So make a list of those agents because they're probably looking for new clients, and certainly look at what the authors and the books that they represent. Don't waste your time if they only publish children's picture books and you've got the next 50 Shades of Grey. They're not interested.
Right.
And also, the kind of most common way of going about it is make a list of the 20 or 30 books that are fairly recent and that are somewhat similar to yours. It could be a disability book, it could be a parenting book, it could be a memoir. You can get a little bit creative, but look and see, go to those authors' websites and see who their agent is. If it doesn't say it, what I do is go to the library, take the books off the shelves and read the acknowledgments. And who did they acknowledge? A publicist, a manager, an agent. That very likely will all be in there. So that's a great way of going about it, because then when you are emailing an agent, then you can say, hey, these 3 authors really resonate with me. Here's what I'm doing that's similar to them. And here's what I'm doing that sets me apart. The more that if you are trying to sell your book, if I tried to sell my book as I'm a mom and I'm a parent and I'm writing our story, do you want to buy it? The answer is no. Because I haven't written any books before, and there are lots of moms and parents and kids, and I told them nothing about my book. However, if I say I have done the research, there is no book out there that is a handbook of where to start when you find out your child is disabled. We all get buried in the mountains of paperwork and planning. We all reinvent the same wheels, and there are thousands and thousands of kids and families who need this information yesterday. So here is the singular resource that every single person needs. And it's actually as funny and fun and not a slog to read. Is very different than like, I'm a mom, I got a book, you want to write it? No.
Sure. Makes perfect sense.
Yep. And also the same goes with, there are so many people in our community who I would encourage them to write the memoir that I'm like, I don't have the burning desire in me to write that, but I want to read other people's. And so many people in our community are saying, I have this voice as either a disabled person myself, as a parent caregiver of whatever it is. Think about, what is the story that only you can tell? Again, if I'm like, I'm a mom and I got some kids and we got some stuff.
Sure.
A lot of people can write that. But what is the story that only you can tell? And even if that is, what is your takeaway you have gotten out of this that gives you a very specific message? What makes your story singular could be the message that we're working towards at the end. It could be you specifically because of your unique background, demographic, all the things. It could be your child is undiagnosed or the only one in the world with this thing. It could also be your specific writing style and voice. And that's something not to be undervalued. When I write both fiction and nonfiction, I have a very specific voice that is very unique to me, because it's just all the little voices in my head that I type real fast. And many people are still figuring out exactly what that is. Some people, it's very serious and earnest and beautiful and just, put together in this gorgeous way. For other people, it's off the cuff and quippy and feels like a social media post and is a fast, zippy read. If you want to, and something we all know, if you want to write a book, read books, and also look at what are the 2 or 3 books, and this will be part of your proposal. what are the 2 or 3 books that you are really emulating in this, in terms of style or content or message? There are so many touchstones that I had for this. I think the touchstone that takes people by surprise, but then you read the book and you're like, nope, not a surprise at all. So here's Reaching. You guys, so you might not know this book, but a number of years ago, 20-ish years ago, there was a book that came out called He's Just Not That Into You, and then it was made into a movie.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a big touchstone for this because it is, first of all, Oprah likes it, so, it can't be all bad. It's fun and it's funny and it's personal stories and lists and sections. But also there's a lot of really heartfelt stuff in there. And as I was writing this, I realized like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was so influenced by that book. But for me personally, I really need to be able to laugh and to be able to relate to personal stories in order to get the information. So I feel like all of that builds into style and looking for yourself of like, what are these books that are on my shelf that I'm looking at every single day that when I am stumped, I thumb through this book and I'm like, oh, here's a section I need. Make it as easy as yourself as possible by knowing what are those touchstones.
And then wouldn't you say there's something to be said for which is kind of your approach, which is here's what I wish I had. In other words, your title could have easily have been everything they don't tell you, but I wish they told me, so to speak, just being driven by empathy.
Yes, absolutely. And how many times have we all said or heard, man, I wish there was a handbook for how to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
There's not. And at first I was indignant of like, why has no one written this book? And I was like, oh, because it's parents like us who need this book and no one has time and most people aren't writers. And I was like, I'm making the time to write and I'm already a writer. So let's give it a go and see what happens. And also being open to your path with your writing, your book, your creative project, whatever it is, taking a different path. For me, I was certain that my path was fiction. And especially coming from movie development and screenwriting, it seemed clear that was my path. But when this became the path, not being afraid to pivot and explore that and see what that was all about. And that goes for also publishing. If you are getting turned down by publishers or agents or whatever, does that mean that you need to reevaluate your work? Or does that mean that you are so excited about your work as it is that self-publishing is the option that is right for you? And, be open to whatever circuitous path it takes, because it's all very circuitous.
For sure. Fascinating. I'm just going to put the title up here again for folks. Everything no one tells you about parenting a disabled child. I love that you said, that this is the alternative to what was it? Go home, Google, and cry. Mm-hmm. When my daughter was diagnosed, we talked about this before on the podcast. There was no such thing as Google. It predated Google. We went online and we were searching the internet. We didn't know what microcephaly meant.
Yeah.
It was Prodigy, I think, at the time. Nice. How long ago it was? Yeah. So it was quite a long time ago. And again, finding resources and not knowing where to start. Some people suspect they have something going on with their child. They don't even know where you go and get an assessment. Mm-hmm. They don't even know, if they say something to there you go. If they say something to their pediatrician, the pediatrician is like, you're okay. If something is alarming, we'll let you know. If something comes up, we'll let you know. But people aren't satisfied with that. So I love that there's a thing to, a book that's going to give them some guidance and support, some comfort, that sense of not feeling like they're the only ones. And as Sean said before, your perspective of this is what worked for us. Try these things for yourself and see, what works for yourself, because every child is unique, even if they have the same diagnosis. still their process of the world is completely different.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we can all benefit in all areas of our lives from asking better questions and being more informed, whether big picture, it's about other humans and how other humans live their lives, or whether it's small picture of what does my kid's day look like and how could his quality of life be improved. A lot of this book is, here's the basic information you need and the starting point for you asking better questions of yourself, of your child, if they're at that communicative level, of your doctors, your educators, your family member, everyone on your team, of how can we ask better questions? Because what we need, exactly as you guys are saying, we need the answers that work for our individual situation. Right. And, there is no one right answer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I say that a whole lot in this book. But I am someone who can help you ask better questions, so that we just spend less time with all this paperwork.
And yeah. I think that more families would rather ask a parent. I think most parents would rather ask a parent than ask a lawyer or a doctor for this, because
we're cheaper.
They're related. Well, it's not just, it's the relatedness. It's like, am I looking at this the right way, or is there something I overlooked?
Well, not only that, the other thing we do is when someone has, and this in some cases is a cultural thing too, especially in our communities of color. I speak as a certified board member. There is an attachment to a person that has a degree. And I think that there's some value in even a doctor, lawyer, or attorney, or whoever licensed or credential individual is, to say each situation is different, or this is my opinion, because what easily takes place is a very dogmatic, approach. I heard something the other day from a guy that's in nutrition on a podcast, and I had heard one of his comments before, which is that he has no qualms, if, ands, or buts as to whether or not oatmeal is bad for you. He just thinks it's just bad for you. It's one of the worst things you could ever eat. And my thought is, as I sit back, I'm like, well, he might have some very valuable things to say otherwise, but I don't know how many of those I'm going to catch if he's throwing that at me in that manner too. So yeah, exactly. So there's something to be said for that. I think it's more valuable.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy and always happy that you brought up the cultural, racial considerations within all of this. That is huge. That's something I didn't have the page count to go into as much as I wanted in this book. And frankly, I would want a co-writer who's on the board to field that with me, because I'm not the person to fully field that. But culture is...
We talked about that. Right? Yeah, and I appreciate that in you.
Yeah, and culture is addressed a bit in this book. I wish it was addressed on every single page, because it is very real. And it was so important to me to have a diverse range of humans here, not just racial wise, but age, disability, LGBTQ, different parts of the country, different diagnoses of children, not just within the parents giving the commentary, but also within the expertise. I don't specifically name the race of my experts in the book, because that's not what this book is about, but there are a lot of great people that you should pull up their websites, and they're all listed in the appendix. And it is so important for all of us to have experts in our lives, whether it's a parenting expert or a neurologist or whatever, who is both within and outside of our specific demographic. We, as you guys know, we so desperately need that. And to be seeing people outside of our own demographic as experts is such a sigh of relief, because it lets the air out of the balloon of like, race, what do we do? It's okay to not have all the answers, but then to say, I'm expanding my circles because I have experts who I can trust, or who look like me in a world where a lot of experts don't look like me. I was really thrilled to have a diversity of experts in here, because frankly, my life has benefited greatly from that. And
well, inclusion is as insidious as racism. It's as sneaky and covert, or it is sneaky and covert, period, whether it's present or absent. Sometimes you don't realize what you're missing by not being represented until representation shows up, and you're like, oh, like as a kid, I had no idea what I was missing by not seeing people on TV that look like me until a certain age. Actually, I didn't realize what I benefited from till years after the benefit came along. So, and that's everything that we talk about when we talk about, what the show is about, what Brian and our mission is about in terms of including people, adding value, and just being as broad as possible. And those things make so much of a difference.
So much of a difference. And also giving a shout out to you guys and your show, having a resource for everybody, but that is dad focused. And whether that is because your audience you're serving is mostly dads, or whether it's because you guys are dads, that is so huge to have dads who are talking about this and who are equally involved in the parenting and the labor and the conversation, that this isn't just the mom's job to field parenting and field disability. That
for sure.
That's key.
For sure. And
Definitely.
again, it shows up different for different cultures, and it's tough enough dealing with it when you're going through a diagnosis for the first time and encountering the unknown, and then taking the cultural impact into consideration beyond that is how you navigate those waters too can be a struggle. So as always, Kelley, this our hour here just flies by so fast. This has been fascinating, very excited. Begin telling everybody about your book, Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child. There it is. Go to Kelley's site, and you can pre-order it. It's kelleycoleman.com. You can find more details about it on Amazon and other places where you find books online. But go to Kelley's site because you get a little insight into her as an individual and author as well, and parent as well. It's been, again, awesome talking about this. We're thrilled for you and for the folks that are going to be able to benefit from your writing and from this book. And hopefully it spawns more. There's got to be more as children get older. There's more topics for you to cover. There are more things for you to be able to put into the next set of books. And we're excited. And we're excited to be part of the promotional tour, if you will, at getting out there and sharing with people what the benefits of this is. Sean, do you want to ask the question? I mean, it's a new, it's a new episode and with Kelley, and happy to
definitely,
ask.
Yeah, definitely.
In the answer different time. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the portion of the show, Kelley, where we'll ask, the following question. Our ability to make the world a better place, no matter how great or small, is tied to our ability or our willingness to change and grow ourselves. So with that said, give us an example of just one thought or belief, especially maybe throughout the book writing process, that you once believed strongly but no longer believe to be true.
I, again, love this question so much. And when you emailed that to me as a reminder, I literally laughed out loud because, especially as I've been writing the book, the answer has become so obvious. And something that I once believed that I absolutely think is no longer true is that there's just not a right way to do pretty much anything. There's the thing to do right now. There's not one right way to write a book, to get a book agent, to sell a book, to parent a child, to figure out epilepsy. There's just doing the best with what we have, and that, whether we like it or not, the way we do things will change and evolve. And that is and should be exciting. So yeah, there's not a right way. There's just we're all figuring it out as we're going along.
Yeah. Love that.
Love that.
Love that. Yeah. Awesome. So thank you again for being here. And again, as we, send you off into the holiday, I hope you have tremendous success on your promotional tour. I know you got a bunch of stops. And again, if people want to see where they can see you, if you are going to be doing a live event, even if you're going to do a Zoom, if you want to hear people talk about the book, or people want to hear you talk about the book, they'll be able to find that on your website.
We're solidifying everything for the new year, and website will have all of that. Also, my Instagram will have all that. All that is on the website.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, fantastic. And we wish you the best of luck and a very happy holiday. And as we wind down on the show, I want to thank everybody again for catching us on podcast outlets, WSTX AM radio. If you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And thank you for Mark and for other folks who've contributed to today, making your comments known here. Appreciate you listening in. One of our sponsors, Billy Footwear. Go to billyfootwear.com, the creator of adaptive footwear for people of all ages and folks who just have issues putting their shoes on. So there, Sean's got up on the screen, billyfootwear.com. Appreciate Billy and support. And his story is a great story as well. And Sean Hall in Hawaii, thank you again, my friend, for all of your help. Sean Francis, this has been great. I'm going to say this as I'll sign off my part of the show. Empathy and love, it's always important, even more so today than it seems like any other time in our history. If you see somebody with a situation that you don't quite understand, have some empathy. You never know what that person's going through. And if you look at the world through lenses of love, through lenses of love, that's correct. The world's a much better place. We have a dad's meet. It's a bi-weekly Zoom meeting for dads who are caregivers, whether it's a child, a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, a caregiver. Dads, as you said, Kelley, dads are often left out of the conversation, but breaking down, the barriers between our cultures and whatnot, just having a safe place. We say that the den is the most safe and comfortable room in the house for guys to get together, and chat. So we've called our get together the Den, and we meet every 2 weeks on Zoom. You can find in our show notes a link to that to sign up. It's free to join and come hang out with other dads who are experiencing what it's like to be a caregiver. With that, I'll throw it to Sean to thank you again, Kelley, for joining us, and throw it to Sean to close out the show for us.
My gratitude is just huge as always. I'm just so thankful for the platform, for everybody that supports what we do. And as we continue to grow our audience and increase the many ways in which we reach out to try and help each other and help people and add value to lives and serve the community. And Kelley, thank you so much for your time today, for being back. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute and your willingness to help us with our own vision as well, whether we're writing individually or together, because we've got so many things in our heads, especially me. Brian tries to help me kind of steer things in. I can't keep up with my own ideas. But to everyone within the sound of my voice, thank you so very much. Remember that questions are more powerful than statements. We should be or try to be more childlike and less childish. Our children teach us so many different things and so many values. We come into this world as close to perfect as we're ever going to be. We should grow, but don't necessarily always have to grow up. So thank you so much, wherever you might be. Appreciate you. Love you so very much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Thanks, Kelley. See you all.